Tyson Fury recently gave an interview, okay, with Garrett A. Davis. All right. Now, in that, he touched about several things. Anthony Joshua, the upcoming fight, hopefully soon, with him and Anthony Joshua's mentality. I might touch on that separately. All right. But he's had his say on his good friend, Billy Joe Saunders, who he is his good friend. I'm going to quote Tyson Fury verbatim here. Okay. Now, this is the quote Tyson Fury. Billy Joe Saunders can be any super middleweight in the world, but he needs to be active. And he's not been active. He needs to be active, and he'll punch Canelo all around the ring. Billy Joe Saunders needs another fight or two. Forget about the money. It's about winning. All right, very interesting from Tyson Fury there. So basically what he's saying there is he fully believes Billy Joe Saunders can beat Canelo Alvarez. As he should. They are friends. Tyson Fury has made some bizarre predictions, but look, Billy Joe is his friend. They're close friends. So that doesn't surprise me in the slightest, right? But what I take from that is that he's acknowledging the fact that Billy Joe, certainly over the last 3 years, he hasn't been active enough. I mean, as I said, but I always bring up the Lemieux fight. He fought Willie Monroe in September. He fought David Lemieux in December 2017. Now, the plan was for him to, he built a lot of steam. He was getting praised. He was even on Joe Rogan. Well, he wasn't, but he was talked about on Joe Rogan. So there was obviously a lot of praise going around with Billy Joe Saunders. So the plan, I think, was for him to, let the snowball gradually take effect, have a few more fights. 2018, right off, didn't fight until the end of that year. And even then, it was just a little non-title fight. Then he had 2 fights in 2019. Again, the opposition were not exactly strong. And he only had 1 fight in 2020. 2020 was a tricky year to get more than 1 fight in anyway. So I'll give him that. But yes, he's not been active enough. Now, Billy Joe, I've said this before, I do feel with Billy Joe that he's a bit like Tyson Fury in a sense that he can rise to the occasion. So like, when he fought Lemieux, right, I felt that was an easy fight for Billy Joe at the time because I just thought stylistically Lemieux is tailor-made for Billy Joe. But I remember a lot of people were picking Lemieux. I think a lot of it was wishful thinking because a lot of people didn't like Billy Joe Saunders. But there was definitely an air of, this guy could, he could cause Billy Joe some issues. So and it was in Canada, lest we forget. So he raised his game. He performed very well. Did the same against Andy Lee. Against Eubank, he just gassed. I think he said he had to get rid of a lot of weight in a very short space of time, and it wasn't good weight. But Billy Joe, in these big occasions, he does have a habit of rising to it. But I also noticed that when Billy Joe is active, so when he's having fights over a consistent basis, and what I mean by that is over the course of a couple of months, having consistent fights, his performances tend to be a lot more, how do I describe it? They tend to be a lot more, what's the word I'm looking for? Stable. We'll call it that, stable. Is that he doesn't tend to, have one off performance and one good performance. They tend to be just kind of consistent. That's the word I was looking for, consistent. They tend to be a lot more consistent. So Fury is saying there that he'd like to see Billy Joe have another fight or two. As we know, Canelo Alvarez is having an in-between fight. He's having this fight against Avni Yildirim on the 27th of February. Likelihood is they'll announce it in the ring after. It's going to be Billy Joe versus Canelo, May the 1st. Now, someone in my live stream said that they were quoting, I don't know if they were quoting, I don't know if Billy Joe said this, but they said that Billy Joe would have liked an interim fight himself. Tyson Fury's alluding to that, all right? And I think that Billy Joe, if he was to have an interim fight, you see, having interim fights can be a good thing because it can get you ring ready, it can get you, sharp switched on, and, if there's any hint of ring rust, having in between fights can help, it can, I don't doubt that. But you also run the risk of being upset. You also run the risk of thinking, right, I have this fight coming up, I've got this fight coming up in May, this fight coming up in May, and maybe they announce something in March and it's just May date with Canelo, May date with Canelo, oh, I came unstuck. Lest we forget, Tommy Morrison had a fight with Lennox Lewis back when he was WBO heavyweight champion. He fought Michael Bent, he got knocked out in the round. He did eventually fight Lennox Lewis, but that was years later. So, these things can happen. Now with Billy Joe, his mandatory with the WBO is Zach Parker, okay? Now, Parker got that mandatory status February last year. I know he fought a guy called Rowan Murdoch, an Australian guy. Zach Parker is... I've seen plenty of Zach Parker's fights. I remember he got an absolute gift over... what's the guy's name? Darrell Williamson or something like that his name was. He got an absolute gift. That was a robbery. He got a gift decision over him. He's never really shown me to be anything more than a European level fighter. You know, I could be wrong, but you can only beat the guys in front of you. The Rowan Murdoch guy was not amazing. You know, he was probably Commonwealth level similar. That would have been a good Commonwealth title fight or something like that, but it wasn't. It shouldn't have been a final eliminator for a world title. So potentially, you know, there's a fight there. You know, I believe, don't quote me on this, but I know Parker's fought on Eddie Hearn shows before. I don't know if he works with Eddie Hearn as a co-promoter or anything like that, but you know, I'm sure Eddie Hearn could swing it. So that would be a nice little in-between fight. In terms of, do I think it'll happen? Hell no. I think that Canelo will take his fight with Yildirim, will move on from that and fight Billy Joe in May. Billy Joe, I mean, I'd be very surprised if they could get him out. And you see, I don't know if Eddie Hearn would want that, because yes, Eddie Hearn is working with Canelo, but Canelo as well is his own. But Canelo has his own promotional life. This is the co-deal. It's not like Eddie Hearn is saying, you know, Canelo has to do this. No, Canelo is free to make his own decisions. You know, even though he's working with Eddie Hearn, you know, he still has probably the final say. Whereas if Billy Joe, I'm sure if Billy Joe wanted an in-between fight, it would have to go through Hearn. I'm sure Hearn would look at that and just think, well, hang on a minute, if you mess up and you lose, or if you get injured, it's all well and good if he goes through a fight and he wins, but let's say, you know, 12th to final round, you know, I'll throw a right hand, bang, hand's broken, you're out for the next 3 months, you know, little things like that. So do I think we'll see Billy Joe in an interim fight? No. I think it's going to be announced in the ring probably straight after Canelo versus Yildirim, Billy Joe versus Canelo in May. In terms of what Tyson Fury's saying there, I'm sure he probably knows himself that, well, he does know himself, because think of it like this, right? He never went straight back into either. Like, the first Wilder fight, he had those 2 fights against Safiri and Pianetta, okay? Went in against Wilder. I didn't think it was enough. I didn't think he'd win. He proved me wrong. Although he didn't get the decision, he proved me wrong. Immediate rematch was called, lest we forget, all right? There was talk of June 2019. Didn't happen. Didn't happen. Fury took a step back, had the fight against Schwartz, had the fight against Wallin, and then went into the Wilder fight when he was sufficient. I'm sure he felt sufficiently ready at that point. We saw what happened. Now, I am not for 1 minute saying that would happen if it was the same for Billy Joe. But as Fury said there, sometimes it's not about money, it's about winning. Now, I'm not saying that's what's going to happen. I think we're going to see Canelo versus Billy Joe in May, personally. That's what I think. I give Billy Joe a better shout than others, personally. I still think Canelo's going to win, but I think Billy Joe is going to be awkward. I think early on he's going to be a very, very awkward fight for Canelo. Once Canelo gets into a rhythm and, you know, starts to get his head movement going, and those body shots from Canelo are going to take the legs off Billy Joe, seriously. So I reckon that's where we're going to see him fade down the stretch. But it's just my opinion. Could be completely wrong. Lads, lassies. I know there's women who watch my videos too, so I will address you as both, lads and lassies. If you could, smash the like button. Subscribe, of course, if you haven't already. You know? Hashtag GMansRocks, King of Ripped Jeans, all that stuff. Got the Ripped Jeans back. Missed them. Didn't wear them in a video last week. I felt absolutely horrible not having them. So if you could, like the video, smash it in on the way out. Smash the like button in or on the way out. Lads, I'll talk to you. Peace.